the cannabis market sector. Investment bankers poured over $47 billion into that sector. And that produced a capacity of 5 times more than what people actually would like to smoke. So I thought the whole sector is a joke. But I just changed my mind about that because there was one news that caught my attention.
Jazz Pharmaceuticals buying GW Pharma for $7.2 billion in cash and stock.
During the crash, where like literally billions of invested dollars were destroyed, one company got bought for $7.2 billion. And when I saw that, I realized, okay, maybe there's some differences in those companies. And I had the chance to talk to the CEO of one of those companies that is doing something different. And here's how he described when I asked him about that certain transaction.
I don't think you can call GW Pharma a cannabis company. I think it's a pharmaceutical company that created a cannabinoid-based pharmaceutical. It was the first one that obtained FDA approval. The company's doing north of $1 billion in sales.
So basically, pharma companies, but using the properties of the cannabis plant. That is what I personally am looking for when looking at this. So before I continue, I should say like I own shares in the company and I actually bought them already some like at actually way higher prices than they're trading right now. And I'm still as bullish. I think I'm probably gonna even buy more, but you should know that. Before we dive deeper into the company, I think it's very crucial to understand what actually the cannabis plant is useful for. Like, what can it do beyond getting somebody high? This was one of the most interesting things for me to learn about when looking at the difference between cannabis companies and then biopharma companies that are using the cannabis plant. Let's dive deep into that. The name medical cannabis is there for a reason. And the reason is that there are many things that it's useful for. I mean, if we look at the most expensive healthcare system in the world, the United States, there's so many problems that we haven't solved yet. For example, if let's just look at pain. You go to the doctor, you get a pill, and that's how it's usually solved. But we always ignore the side effects that you get from those. So you go to the doctor again, then you get the next pill, right? It feels like a vicious cycle that we're starting there. And I just got the feeling that we should look at this whole thing slightly broader than we're doing it now.
Any problem that you have, you take a pill for it and don't worry about the consequences, but there is consequence, right? Like liver, kidney issues and gut issues and all types of other inflammatory diseases that are formed from us taking, in a chronic use of pharmaceuticals. And then for that, they'll tell you, go take another pill.
Why? Why is that when we know about all the side effects and the vicious cycles that we actually get people into by, for example, giving them opioids? What I really liked was the answer that Aras gave me to that. I think it somehow opens the mind up to seeing how the system actually works and what the incentives are.
The medical pharmaceutical design of allopathic medicine over the last 150 years or so, in my opinion, is sort of aged because we had this model of single molecule, single target, and we neglected other forms of medicine, which for thousands of years we've been using, which is plant-based medicine that happens to have more of a synergistic effect of multiple molecules targeting multiple receptors.
Single molecule, single receptor. That's how we've been doing medicine for the last 150 years, and we've solved tons of problems with that. Don't get me wrong. I highly appreciate where we've gotten at this point in time, but I think there's just so much more to solve when we look at more complex systems. They're harder to figure out, but I think it's really worth figuring it out. Just looking at the body, there's like a whole communication system in there. It's called the endocannabinoid system. It's the way how our body communicates and also regulates itself. So if we just target like one receptor, one molecule, it's like, I don't know, setting the temperature on the water heater or on the hairdryer. We usually like then want to balance the whole house. So we want to like target whole areas. And this is exactly what we can do with the endocannabinoid system, where we're tackling whole areas, which makes it harder to measure. But this is where we actually want to get to achieve like systematic changes. And as I said, like that system, our body, like it's producing those on its own. Like this is why we have those receptors. This is how our body manages like sleep, pain, and many other things. Like this is the communication system built into our body, and with the right tools, we can get improvements in those areas. Because like if our body gets some like miscommunications, or where we're just having problems with some certain areas, this is how we can fix like a bigger part of the system without getting the side effects of just targeting one of those receptors.
It's not a one target, one molecule model. It's a multiple target, multiple molecule model, and that's why people call it the Entourage Effect.
The thing with those multiple receptors is just it's harder to make science around it. So usually it works like this. You do the science, you test it, you see the results. But what we've seen in that with the medical cannabis is that people actually reduced their opioid consumptions, which is what we want to achieve, right? We know how bad it is, and now we're getting back to the science after we're seeing that it actually works, and now we're catching up with the science. But this is hard. It's not as easy as if we're targeting just a single receptor, right? This is probably the reason I think why it got such an inconsistent reputation. I mean, if we just look at if I consume cannabinoids, how much does my system actually receive of that? And this is a key driver of how we have to tackle this new kind of medicine. So, what we're looking at here is not the difference in the plant, but it's the delivery of what's in the plant into our body. How do we make sure that what we actually want to provide our body with, it can actually use in the correct way?
You're taking 10 milligrams of CBD of coconut oil formulation. It's expected that the bioavailability or the absorption of that is between 10 to 20%. So a lot of that is being wasted. In a more advanced drug delivery system or a more advanced formulation, you're getting much higher absorption levels of 70, 80%.
10 to 20% compared to like 7 to 80%. Like, I mean, if 80% of all the ingredients that we want to provide the body with actually gets wasted, it's really, really hard to control that. So the important thing is, how do we package this whole thing that our body actually receives what we want to provide it with, but also the mixture. As we said, there's so many different receptors, there's so many different cannabinoids, and that's the two biggest levers in this whole thing. How should they be mixed up, and how can we deliver them to the body that we're actually getting the body to get the ingredients that it needs to achieve that effect that we want to get. And that's exactly what the companies that didn't go bust in the crash were working on. They're doing they're figuring out all the difficult work to achieve those two things. So there's really, really different kind of cannabis companies, right? I mean, there's the ones that grow weed, and then there's the other ones that do biopharma work, but they're using the ingredients. I ask Aras, like, why don't they just like change strategy, right? I mean, if they're growing all that stuff, why don't they just now refocus the company?
I don't think you wake up one day and you change the DNA of your entire organization to go from, having the best pre-rolls in the market to now having an entire medical affairs, patient support, and a standardized medicine platform.
So there is a moat. The biopharma companies, they cannot just be copied overnight. But why haven't they had a bigger success yet? There is a few reasons that are hindering this. So the one thing is the cost. Like there's the whole healthcare system, and they're just sponsoring not everything, right? So the stuff that people would need, cannabis based, often is not covered by by the insurance companies. So people are not picking up. I mean, why would you if you just can get something else for free and you're not that sure yourself about the difference? Then the other part, it's for many, it's too hard to access because like you just don't know where to get it, or maybe your doctors even don't even know how to use it, because there's lots of things to know, like how to dose it. It's not as easy. You have to understand. You have to have some like trial and error, because we're dealing with complex systems and more than one receptor. So that's just the trade-offs that we have here. And the third thing actually is it's stigma. I mean, if you say like I need cannabis for that, people are like, you just want to get high or whatever. And this is one thing that we have to overcome, which I'm personally convinced that that we will do that soon.
Medical cannabis, even though again it has potentially less unintended consequences or symptoms than other therapeutics, it is viewed as kind of weed and stigma. And a lot of patients we hear are concerned about the optics. What if their kids find out they're using medical cannabis? What if their parents find out? And where traditional pharmaceutical is, hey, doctor told me to eat this pill, I eat this pill.
I think one big thing to achieve there is actually the insurance coverage. But there is also laws around that. So, for example, cannabis currently is in the same classification as heroin, right? Which intuitively doesn't make any sense. And I think we're kind of figuring out now that it does not make sense, because there's different rules how, as a company, you can like research a topic then, or how much of the costs you incur you can actually deduct from your taxes, which is crucial when you invest. Like that's tons of money that you would lose. But there's been a big thing coming up. So the president of the United States signed a schedule to actually move cannabis into a different class. So what would that actually mean for businesses? I mean, most of the coverage that I looked at that focuses on this in the media, it's all about the recreational stuff. But that's not where the biggest lever lies. So I asked Aras from Avicanna on how that actually plays out from the medical side if that finally gets through.
But for us, and I think for medical-oriented companies, the outcome is much more profound. I think this will allow the larger healthcare biotech institutions and pharmaceutical companies to enter, to look at it more seriously. This will allow academic and clinical institutions in the United States to now conduct research. This is a major limiting factor for the United States until this rescheduling takes place, and that's why Canada has been so far ahead. We've been able to conduct the studies and generate data, which we use for various reasons, from patents to clinical guidelines to actual supplementary information for clinical development. So I think the U.S. rescheduling will give a more of a boost to the medical side, and I hope that it creates more of a separation between the recreational and the medical side, because there's indications there's at least they alluded to the need for real world evidence studies. Last week we published in the Canadian Journal of Pain a major study related to real world evidence study results in Canada. They alluded to insurance coverage with Medicare, which is really exciting for Americans, but we've been doing this in Canada. Again, we do insurance adjudication.
So Canadians are literally with Avicanna 10 years ahead of where the United States of America are, just because of the legal classification on how you're allowed to deal with that. They've got the clinical trials, the real life data and everything. And so once the US opens up, I think it's kind of obvious like to whom companies are gonna reach out to once those products and that knowledge actually can be get into that market. Yeah, which brings us to the company Avicanna. They're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. As said before, disclaimer: I own shares at higher prices than when recording this video, and they are building a whole like service around this. They set themselves up pretty smartly. They grow their own plants, so they just can make sure the quality is proper, and they're working on what we described before, the important things of what should be the composition of the cannabinoids that we want to like get into the body, and the delivery systems. That's where they're strong and that's what they're working on. One thing I thought is interesting is they're not seeing themselves as a product company only, because they're saying this, if you wanna treat customers properly with that, like cannabis, it's not a product, but you need to do it as a service. There's review rounds, there's some trial and error.
I like to simplify medical cannabis and say it's not a product, it's a service.
They've built a full medical platform, which means like pharmacists reviewing how people react to, like, first making a plan, reviewing how the patients react to the dosing that you're getting, and then making adjustments. Like it's not a, just like a company having a dispensary selling weed around the corner. Like that is, it's proper science what we've got here. It's not a dispensary, it's a healthcare company, and the focus is on the word health and care in that, not recreational or fun. Their product was tested for the delivery system working properly, and their system was tested head to head with that from JW Pharma, the big transaction, the only FDA approved cannabinoid product in the market.
But we actually compared it to Epidiolex as well, which is sort of the gold standard in the industry today, as the only FDA approved sort of drug on the natural cannabinoid side. And it outperformed it in terms of bioavailability and Tmax, which is like how fast the uptake is. So that's exciting, right? We're seeing that, our drug delivery systems are not only proprietary and protected, but they're actually outperforming gold standards. Unorex is a 10% CBD tincture. It's quite similar to the Epidiolex formulation, and we've been able to register it in Colombia for the same minor or the same sub-indications of epilepsy, which is Lennox-Gastaut and Dravet syndrome. In Colombia, it's a real pharmaceutical. It's registered as by within VIMA, which is a regulatory agency in Colombia, as a pharmaceutical. That same product is sold in Canada under the Rofido brand, Microdrop 100, which is the same formulation, but it's being sold under medical cannabis, and it is being utilized by epilepsy patients, and it is being prescribed by neurologists in Canada. So that's where you see the connection, right, in terms of medical to pharma.
One thing is always to understand, okay, like, is that a great market? Is it a great company? But in the end, it always comes down to what drives the people running the company. So I asked Aras for a personal story on how he gets like reflection on what they're building. And when I saw his reaction when telling the story, I could really feel that this is something that drives him forward. And let's listen to the story that he told me.
He had a case study, a little girl who had a lot of issues, a significant number of seizures every single day, and she was having, at a very young age, I think she was 2 or 3 years old, where the initial video that they showed us was she was having issues walking. He showed us a video a couple of years ago about her post CBD oil, and her seizures had completely stopped. She was able to sort of, act and behave as a normal child and not have the growth and developmental issues that are associated with multiple symptoms, seizures a day. And then last year, he actually brought her as a guest into the symposium, which was really, really emotional for me and the team. I know we were all happy to see her. She's like 5 or 6 years old now, and she was cool. She went on the stage and now she spoke. Her mom spoke as a caregiver about how cannabinoid-based medicine has changed her family's life.
To me, that really feels like the stuff I can trust, that he wants to go further. Like that's the reason why you can get through all the hassle of building a company. But besides like that, sad but beautiful stories, I asked him what keeps him up at night these days. Here's what he said.
How do I further separate Avicanna from recreational cannabis companies? Is been my 9-year challenge. It's sometimes it gets easier, sometimes it gets harder.
Yeah, I hope I could do my small share in making clear of the differentiation between just a cannabis company and a biopharma company using the cannabis plant to drive progress in healthcare, in pharma. And I think Avicanna is a great shot at that. As I said, I personally own shares. I'm convinced that they've got a good chance of solving a big chunk of problems in the future. if you like those kind of breakdowns that we've done here, feel free to give me a follow my newsletter. It's I'm just sharing my personal investment story here and my interactions with company leaders, where I'm so grateful for that they're taking the time to explain me their stories and just help me in my personal research on how to find the best companies and get better at investing myself. If you want to join my journey, please give me a follow and get notified for further videos. Follow my newsletter. See you next time. Thank you.